Okay. Hello. I apologize about the delay. I did a Windows reinstall yesterday and I had to do everything again from scratch. I did set up OBS, the tool that I use to stream, earlier today, but I forgot to link it to YouTube, and it didn't exactly go straightforward when I started to do this 8 minutes ago, like 1 minute before the live show. I'm looking for confirmation that I know people were expecting it to go live a few minutes ago, but I don't know if there are any. If you could let me know if you hear me, see my Salesforce window, and my camera perhaps. Okay, I know that there is a bit of a, typically there is a bit of delay when streaming, so when you see this, let me know so that we can get started. I'll just get organized until I see some interaction. We're doing Camp Apex. Yeah, I should probably post to LinkedIn as well. Flow stream is live. Awesome. Thank you, Natalia. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. Okay. Awesome. So I'll just I know that we only have a couple of people, so I'll just do the typical introduction of what we do here very quickly before we get started. So this live stream is meant for Salesforce admins, consultants, developers, anyone who is learning flows, or you know, you already know some flows and then you need some practice, or if you have questions or concerns, or you're just you know, like casually talking about flows. What we have been doing in the last few sessions, we would go to Camp Apex. We are not doing Apex, we're building everything in flows, where we have a project like Event Cloud project. And instead of doing this in Apex, we do these challenges in flows. So if you want to follow along, if you want to try this, if you have any questions, even if you have any topics. So I prepare something to go throughout the stream in case nobody has questions, or there is no particular topics that you would like me to cover. But the point is you. So if you have a particular topic, a particular use case, feel free to send those my way, and then we cover them in the session instead. So if you have any questions or topics that you would like us to discuss today, feel free to send them in the chat. If you have a use case, feel free to send it to me on LinkedIn, on email, on YouTube, on anywhere, and I'll cover it in a future session. Resuming what we were doing last time we were doing this Event Cloud project, and a quick introduction to this particular practice or challenge. And that is, after you go to campapex.org, you can navigate to projects, from which you can go to Event Cloud, and then you click Start. And you can skip the I mean, you can go through the first lesson to know the data schema or the data model, and the when you go to any of the use cases or the user stories, you will see this login to run and a link to I think the link to install a package. That package is going to have the objects that that are available as part of this application. So you already have all of this set up, the application. Or are you taking forever? After you install the package, it's going to install the application and the objects and the relationships and everything for you, and then you can start building after that. And the link to the package would be somewhere here next to any of those user stories. I'll just log into the org. That's the link to the org. And then connect. Okay. We are connected now. I mean, I don't know if there is a need to connect, because we're not. I think you would do that to test these the results, but we're not testing results. We're just building, because this is meant for Apex. It's not meant for flows. Anyway, last time we stopped at this challenge. We completed the sponsor tier. And we are ready to tackle this challenge here. Okay. So far so good. Do you guys have like? I just want some interaction. I know that Natalia confirmed that the audio and video are fine. I'm just a little concerned about the new setup. Are you guys following along? What are you planning to build with me? Like, what's if I may ask, what's the objective? Are you here to listen? Are you here to follow along? Are you here because you have questions or use cases? What are you most interested in, or what are you mostly looking for from these live streams? Just one way to confirm that everything is working just fine, and at the same time, I want to know what you're interested in for future sessions. These live streams are also recorded, and they become available on the channel if someone wants to watch them later. Of course, they can skip through all of these fillers that we have been talking about and just get to the point right away. Okay, I'll just resume. And for anybody who is interested in this, the recording is going to be on the channel. So let's go through this. Reading through the user story as a sponsorship coordinator. I need the system to prevent the status of a sponsor Sean, which makes me want to ask a question. Like, I know last time I was like we spent the entire hour talking about this challenge. Sorry, I'm just pausing to respond to Sean's. Last time we spent like the entire hour pretty much talking about this challenge, and I know that I'm slow. Like I pause at everything and talk about the why and the design and the alternatives and whatnot. Like, what does that pace sound like? Like, do you feel like do you feel like this pace is good? Do you feel like we should speed up a little bit? Do you think we should just get the challenge done without much explanations? Are you the only one? I mean, it says on my end that there is a few concurrent viewers, but I know that these numbers are just to go up and down and not exactly real time. Okay. All right. Let's resume that. I need the system to prevent the status of a sponsor record from being updated to accepted unless it is associated with an event. So when I read something like this, I don't remember exactly what a sponsor is or what happens when what does that mean. But I do remember that there was a sponsor object. Let me go back to that event cloud. I'm just, speaking like what happens in my mind when I'm reading a new requirement or a user story. So I don't remember what that means, or when a sponsor record being updated to accepted, what gets updated to accepted exactly. Remember, it's a good, when you communicate with others, you need to communicate in a key value pair. You don't say when a record gets updated to accepted, that doesn't make sense. You need to say when a record's field or key gets updated to X value. So you always want to speak like this: when that field on that record gets updated to that value. So key value pairs. Right here, I think there was a status field on the sponsor object. So there is a sponsor object, and when you create a new one, then there is a status, and one of those values will be accepted. So the requirement here didn't mention the status, which is I'm assuming it's gonna say the status down here. The status is here in the acceptance criteria, which is fine. So the user story is actually meant to be more of a business description rather than a technical description. So this is actually fine as long as we have the technical communication and the acceptance criteria. So let's read the acceptance criteria when the status field is field of a sponsor record. I'm sorry, the sponsor record cannot be updated to accepted until the event field is populated. So if someone is creating a new sponsor where they leave the event blank and then they set the status to accepted, then it should stop them and alert them that they need to populate the event first. Reading the second piece, the user should see this error when attempting to accept a sponsor. Without an event, a sponsor must be associated with an event before being accepted. So that statement makes me think of the typical two scenarios. If someone is creating a new sponsor and if someone is updating an existing sponsor. If we're creating a new sponsor with the status of accepted, then we need to associate an event. In that case, we will display the error message. If someone is updating a sponsor record from some other value other than accepted to accepted, and the event is blank, then we display the error message as well. So just thinking about the possible scenarios a little bit before going ahead and building the flow, attempting to create the record manually to see what that looks like if I were an end user before building a flow, and then we go ahead and build. Let's go ahead and start building this. I'm going to the object from which I'm going to navigate to flow triggers, and then I will start a new flow. Yes, they are looking for a validation. This user story is this requirement is a validation, and I don't build validation rules anymore. And after Salesforce released the display error in a before save flow, we don't need to build validation rules anymore. I mean, you could still do that just fine, but you have so much more control over what happens in a flow, and some capabilities that you can't have in a validation rule. An example is you can perform a query. So you can you can basically build a validation rule by getting some value from another record or even another object altogether. So you can get the value some other place, maybe from a metadata or a custom settings, and then use well, I mean, you can grab some settings in validation rules or formulas in general, but you can't query other objects or records in a validation rule. I personally don't build any validation rules anymore, unless I work in an org that already has validation rules built in. So we just continue working with it as is. Unless we have the capacity and we have the time to refactor them and move them to flows. So we're going to build a before safe flow with a validation message. And we were talking a minute ago that we need this to run on create and on update. So I'm going to select on create or update. Now I'll start putting the conditions down. And again, I like to think of this as two. Let me think about them separately. Like, don't think about both conditions that are met for created or updated. I rather think about created independently, and then I think about updated independently with an or statement in between. So that's just an easier way to think about these things. Don't generally you don't want to build anything complex. You want to break it down into smaller pieces. So I'm gonna select, I'm gonna think about created first. When a record gets created, where an event is left blank, that's the first statement. So the event is left blank. I think if you do this, it would work. I think if you just do this, it would work. This is like blank. But I typically do that if when it gets created, it basically doesn't have a value, so it's still null. So when the event is null, it doesn't have a value yet, and someone is setting the status to accepted. So someone is creating a new record for the first time, setting the status to accepted, leaving the event blank or null, and then saving. So these are the conditions for a new record. Now I'll change this from to custom logic and use the or statement at the end. But for now, I'm just gonna put the conditions down. These two conditions are for created. Now let's think about the updated conditions. The updated conditions will be if someone is changing the status value from something other than accepted to accepted. This statement might sound like one thing, but in fact it is two things. The first part is someone is changing that statement, like that part of the statement. Someone is changing, so we have to use the operator is changed true. So I'm gonna use is status is changed true. So first someone changed the value. The second part is change it to something. What's the value that it got changed to? The value that it got changed to would be accepted, which I already put earlier down here. But I'm just separating the two. I like to know that these two are meant for created, these two are meant for updated. This is more of a clarity thing over performance thing. But I could just delete this one and keep them and use only one in these two. Let's write the custom condition and then think about all the conditions together. Let's do the custom condition. So these first two are meant for created, and then these last two are meant for updated, and then this is the or statement in here. So I'm saying if someone is creating a new record where the status is accepted and leaving the event null, then this flow is going to run. Or if someone is updating a record and the update is as follows: changing the status. So changing the status, that's the first line. To accepted, that's the second line. Something is missing, that's and the event is null true. So that's 3, 4, and 5. So someone is updating the status from some other value to accepted and leaving the event blank, then this flow should run as well. So these are the conditions. This needs to be a fast field updates flow because it's running in before save context. We talked about that before. If you would like us to talk about that some more, we can do that. So now we've got the conditions down. Let's close this. And pretty much when you build a validation in flows, it's like all your conditions are here, and then you've got the custom error element. Most of the times that's the case. Like you have all the conditions to be met in the entry condition, and then you display the custom error because the conditions are met. Let's say display error here. This one is very straightforward. This is a fairly recent release from Salesforce, and you see it's almost identical to a validation rule. You want to display the error in a window, or do you want to display it on a particular field? We'd like to display this on the event field, and we would like it to say the message that was provided to us here. A sponsor must be associated with an event before being accepted. That's pretty much what we need to do. Let's save this. I like to name these validation flows with the keyword validation. Maybe like validation, and then require an event when a sponsor status is accepted. Long names for flows, and I like flows to have a name that makes sense. Like you don't have, think about it this way: someone is opening the list views for flows, and they want to know what the flow is doing without having to open the flow and without having to read the description of the flow. If you manage to do that, to give it a name that does that job, then this is a very good name. Let's activate. We can debug, but I'm just going to activate this. I'll go to a sponsor record now, and let's test these things. Let's create, so we're gonna test a few things now. We're gonna test a new record. We're gonna test an updated record. We're also going to test a positive use case, and we're going to test a negative use case. And we're going to test a positive use case for a created record, and a positive use case for an updated record, and a negative use case for a created record, and a negative use case for an updated record. So this is like 4 different scenarios, and this is typically the job of a QA, a person who's doing QA, and most of the times that's just us. Like it's you doing admin and QA and everything. Let's give this some dummy name, and set the status to accepted. Oh, I'm creating an event. I need to create a sponsor. Some name, a status to accepted. Now this is a positive use case. Positive use case means that this is like we wrote our logic to run when this happens. Like this is what should happen when these conditions are met. So this is a positive use case. A negative use case is like when the conditions are not met, this is not supposed to run. So we're going to test both of them. The expectation now that we set the status to accepted is that we get an error message. Let's see. So a sponsor cannot be created without an email address. This is the validation we created the other day, last time. And then a sponsor must be associated with an event before being accepted. So if we set an event here and then save, we don't get that error message here. We get the other one, but now we don't get it. So this is the expected behavior. Now let me just put some dummy email here and set the status to something else. Now this is a negative use case where we're not setting it to accepted, and the expectation is that it lets us save just fine. We need it to allow us to save if the status is something other than accepted. Only show the error if it is accepted and the event is missing. So I'm gonna clear the event and set the status to something else so that it should allow us to save. That's the expected behavior. So this is a negative test case. Now let's do an update. Let's go here and change this from pending to accepted and save. We should get an error. So the event is required. if we populate an event now, this is considered a negative use case as well, where the conditions are not met, so the flow is not supposed to show an error. It is supposed to save. So let's click that, and then it does save just fine. So that's this challenge. Do you have questions about any of this, any of what we did? The why, the how, the what, before we move on to the next challenge? I'll just look at the next challenge until we get a question, if we do get a question. As a financial manager, I need the system to automatically update the net revenue of an event record whenever there are changes to its gross revenue or total expenses. So that way it can ensure real-time accuracy of our financial reporting and provide stuff. Alright, I'll resume the acceptance criteria in a minute. On my end, how do we put the text for the error? Body text. The text of the error is under the error message here. I just you can write it down. If you need to use some values from the flow, you can insert a resource. You can display an error message on a particular field here. You can actually display multiple error messages. So I can actually use like the second one would be a window. So remember when we created a new sponsor and set it to accepted and save, you see the error is shown here, a sponsor must be, but it's not shown down here. So if I update it now this way, I'm displaying two errors now, one of them at the field and the other one at the window. And now I'm gonna save again. I should expect the error to show up under the field and also in the window. Let's click save. Now it shows here as well. It shows in two different places. Is it redundant? Maybe. Is it helpful? Maybe as well. I'm not sure. I mean, for a small window like this where we have only a small number of fields, I would just lean towards displaying it at the field only. But if it's a larger form where the someone like might scroll down outside of the field view, then I might display the record error and the field error as well. So they see the record error, and then, or maybe there is not need, just like the window, because they can click on this and then it takes them to the field. I haven't tried leaving it blank before. What does the error read? Like, can I even leave it blank? It says required. There is like a required. Yeah, it's required. Okay, that's fine. Let's moving forward with this new user story or requirement, and that's automatic update of net revenue on financial changes. I'm still like, I don't remember anything in the data model. I'm gonna go to the acceptance criteria to remember stuff. We're looking at a net revenue custom field on event custom object. I made an assumption that this is a field when it said of an event, so we know that an event is an object, so this must be a field. Should always reflect the formula gross revenue minus total expenses. Let's go on the event and attempt to create a new event to see this stuff. Creating a new event, we have the total expenses, gross revenue, and net revenue, and all of these, like something that just crossed my mind when I read this line. Well, it's because it actually said formula. It said formula, so I thought it would be a formula, but when we looked on this, It turns out it's not a formula. This is of data type currency, I assume. Yeah, it doesn't let me. Yeah, it's currency. All three are of data type currency, and it's not a formula, but the expectation is that it performs this calculation of the formula. Okay, so the formula should be the revenue minus the expense. Now, from a design point of view, I wouldn't do that. I would actually create a formula, so that it gets updated whenever any of those two values get updated. But that's fine. So the second line actually just said the same statement I was just thinking about. If either the revenue or the expense, oh, that's not the case. So what I was thinking about is the fact that we need the revenue to the net revenue to update. Going back here, we need the net revenue to be gross revenue minus total expense. I don't like the way this is put. Like, I would put gross revenue to the left and then total expense to the right, so that gross revenue minus total expense equals net revenue. Or I would put them below each other, gross revenue under which total expense, and then under that net revenue. So you read it in order: gross revenue minus total expense equals net revenue. Small thing, but I think it matters. Anyway, so whenever a change happens on the gross revenue, or whenever a change happens on the expense, then recalculate this gross minus expenses and update that net revenue. And the scenario when a record gets created is to just perform these calculations. And there is the second piece of the acceptance criteria is that if either of these two fields, the gross or the total expense, are blank, the net revenue should be blank. It should be blank if one of those two is left blank. So that makes us think also that someone might populate both of them. I don't know if that's it might happen. Someone populated both fields and then they updated one of them to be blank. Then we need this to go back to blank. Let's start. Let's go. Like, I can't put all of the conditions right away in my head right now, but let's start thinking about those as part of a flow. Let's close this and go to the object for this object, the object settings, object manager, flow triggers, new flow, and let's start thinking about the conditions to make this run. I'll select is created or updated because I need it to run in both scenarios. Let's think about the conditions. When a record gets created where these two fields are populated, so let me close this. These two fields are total expense and gross revenue. Total expense and gross revenue is null false, is null false. All right, if a record gets created and we have these two values, then we need to calculate gross revenue minus total expense. So this is the first scenario. Now another scenario is a record gets created and only one of those two is populated. Then we don't want it to run. We can leave it blank. Is it possible that someone creates a new thing and does this and some value in here and leaves total expense blank? You know, like, I can't think of a reason for an end user to do that, but I'm gonna account for it anyway. This would be an edge case. This is not supposed to be the case. If they leave the total expense blank, then we need to set the net revenue to blank. Meaning, even if someone left the total expense blank, we still want this flow to run. So we want it to run if the two fields are populated, and we need it to run if only one of those two fields is populated. Okay. What if both of them are left blank? Again, a user might go and populate the net revenue. I don't know, that sounds like a troll move, but I want to think about it. If someone is just like leaving both fields blank and then they put the net revenue only, yeah, maybe it's not a troll move, but maybe they just like they know what the net revenue is and they just didn't bother to enter the gross revenue and the total expense, and they just populated this. According to the requirement, it should be updated to blank. According to the requirement, if either of these two are blank, then we should set the net revenue to blank. It says if either of them, it doesn't say if both of them are blank. I don't know if the requirement addresses when both of them are left blank and the net revenue is being populated. I'm thinking from an extreme point of view, but yeah, that's fine. Let's think about all of these possible scenarios. So someone might actually populate this or this or this, leave this or this or this blank, a combination of the three. Okay, I feel like this, if I write all of these possible conditions, then it might just get out of hand. So let's try to think of a way to account for all of them. Yeah, a bunch of or. So one of them would be if they leave, both of them are populated, and then both of them are blank, or one of them is blank and the other is populated, or one of the first one is populated and the other one is blank. And all of this we're accounting for on create or update, and there is still the conditions when it gets updated. So it does sound like a lot of scenarios. So in that case I wouldn't just it might be good from a performance point of view, but I think it will be confusing if I put you see, the possibilities would be, I think it's 2 to the power of 2, or is it 3 to the power of 3? I don't know, 9 possibilities perhaps. And instead of writing 9 possibilities, I would think that let's just get it to run whenever it's a new record. Whenever someone creates a new record, always like run this logic. And if it gets updated, then whenever any of those 3 fields get updated. So I'll approach this a little bit differently. And this is run before save as well. So let's because like the way we write conditions is affected by this. I'll say if it's a new record, and the new record is whenever the ID is null, it means this is a new record, or whenever any of the 3 fields get updated. So is changed true, that's the gross revenue, and then the total expense is changed true, and then the net revenue is changed true, and then that's an OR statement. This is a simplified version, just to reduce the possibilities, a lot, and just calculate this whenever if it's a new record, calculate if any of those 3 values get updated, then update. Now what's the logic now? The logic is a couple of things. We're gonna calculate the difference if there are values. So if both of them are populated, we're gonna calculate the difference. And else, for any other possibility, then we're gonna set the net revenue to blank. So the possibilities are as follows. these have values, and this has value. In that case, we're going to calculate. All the other possibilities are this is populated and this is blank. Then we're going to set this to blank. Or the opposite. This is blank and this is populated. We're going to set this to blank. Or both of them are blank. Then we're going to set this to blank. So these are all the possibilities. Since the latter possibilities, the last three possibilities that I just mentioned, all of them pour towards the same result, which is setting the net revenue to no value or blank, then I'm just going to account for the first scenario, which is where we have values in these two fields, and then anything else just set the net revenue to blank. Let's build it and then revisit this explanation. I'm sure I confused everyone. Okay, so we're gonna have a decision element, and we're gonna say these two fields are populated. Total expense. I'll say total expenses and gross revenue are populated, and that's a yes, and that's a no. And the triggering record is, again, you can type record or triggering to find the triggering record. That's the event, and that's the expense. Total expense is blank false. It has a value. And then the other one, I'm just going to copy the record here, the triggering record. Gross revenue is blank false. Okay. So we've got the first scenario. If these two are populated, then we're going to perform the logic of this minus that minus this. Else, set it to blank. Let's do the else first. Let's set. We use an assignment to set a value. Let's say set net revenue to blank. The triggering record is the event, and then the net revenue, we're going to set it to no value. And let's now address if these two are populated. We're going to use an assignment element to set net revenue. Now this is the actual net revenue now. And the triggering record event net revenue, what's the value going to be? It's going to be gross revenue minus expense. So this is a formula. We're going to create a new resource here. Let's create a formula, and I like to name formulas like this. This is a currency data type, and then this is the net revenue. This is a currency, and the value here is the triggering record gross revenue minus the triggering record expense. Check in syntax, the calculation is good, and that's it. We're running a before save flow. We don't have to use an update element. We're accounting for all the scenarios. Can't we make the net revenue read only to avoid that? Yes. And this is a good way of thinking and approaching things. We're basically like working based on the requirements that we have, but thinking outside of the flow box is a good thing. Sometimes making fields required, read only, heading from the page, layout not accessible, only accessible to API, things like that. So thinking outside of the requirement is good, and sometimes challenging the requirement, even challenging the customer's requirement, or it's not exactly, if you're working with the team, it's not challenging the team's requirements, but sharing your insights and thoughts helps change the design, or maybe direct the design to a better place. So that's definitely a good idea. So we're good with this. Let's save. and let's say let's name this set net revenue, and we can put the event at the beginning here to specify that this is for the object event. And we can activate and go test. Let's debug instead. Okay, I'm gonna have to create the records where I can use to debug. Let's activate and go and test. Okay, now let's go to events. Let's create a new event, and now let's start testing. Some event. I just clicked save. Anyway, this is good. We left both fields blank. This is blank, so this is the expected behavior. I'll copy this. One second. Sorry, my son barged into the room. Okay, where were we? So we're testing. This is the second event, and let's set this only and nothing else. The expectation is that net revenue remains blank. We can try again and set the other one. Same expectation. This should be blank still. Now let's create a new event where we populate both of them. Let's say 500 and then 600. Then this should be 600 minus 500. This should be 100. Let's save and see. It's 100, so it's working as expected. We just tested the 4 possibilities for a new record. Now let's test an update. And the update is whenever one of those values changes, whenever any of the 3 values changes, then it does run again. Let's change this to 700. The expectation is that this becomes 200. It does. Now let's clear this value. The expectation is that this gets cleared. It does. Now let's bring it just back to 700 so that it gets populated again. Now let's clear the other one. The expectation is that this gets updated to blank. It does. And now I'll just again flip it again just to populate this, and then I'm going to leave these 2 blank. It should update this to blank, which it does. And the last thing is I want to populate these 2. This should be 200. The last thing is if I clear this value and I save, it should get populated again, which it does. Now I feel like this flow is not the best performant because we're just making it run in some scenarios where it didn't have to. Maybe? Yeah, and that's mostly on create. When we create it, like if someone is creating a record where they didn't populate any of those values, it does run and then checks the logic and sees that and sets the... Yeah, if you're creating a new event, it does, the flow runs, like regardless of what we have, it's going to run anyway. So this takes time. So this is performance now. Even though it's not going to calculate anything, like someone creating a new record, leaving all 3 fields blank, the flow is going to run. It will see that total expense and gross revenue are left blank. So it goes down the decision element of setting the net revenue to blank, which was already blank. So it's just redundant. And then it ends the flow. I know it's milliseconds, but adding conditions to the flows would be better from a performance point of view. but from a clarity point of view, what we did is much clearer and easier to read even when you go back and read it yourself in the future. So that's it for today. Does anybody have any questions about any of this? These two challenges, how many do we still have? 1, 2. Looks like we only have 2, so we might be able to finish this project next time. I'm just gonna wait for another minute to see if anybody has any other questions. Feel free to hop if you don't have any questions or comments. I want to do this thing where I can just hide my screen and just like, I think I can just but I think I'm gonna need to add another resource. Video where? If I do this, yeah, now it's showing things that I don't want it to show. Right. Okay. I guess that's what I wanted to do, so that when we are not demoing anything, then I can just do a full screen. There's definitely a delay in the stream. Okay. All right, thank you so much everyone for today. I hope you found value. I hope I answered some questions. Again, if you have use cases or questions or topics that you would like us to discuss, feel free to send them to me, and I will discuss them in a future session. Until then, you all have a lovely day, a lovely weekend. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.